The great hall of the Galactic Assembly stretched out like a massive cathedral made of crystal and light. Thousands of alien species filled the seats that rose up in circles toward the domed ceiling. Some aliens had wings. Some had scales. Others were just clouds of gas held together by energy fields. They all came here to make decisions about the galaxy. Commander Park stood at the center of it all. He wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's United Defense Force. Next to him stood Doctor in her white scientific robes. They were the only two humans in a room filled with beings who had traveled the stars for thousands of years. Looked calm, but his hands were tense behind his back. Humanity had come here with a simple request. They wanted the right to settle on 3 empty planets in the outer colonies. These planets had no one living on them. They were just rocks floating in space. But in the galaxy, even empty rocks had value. The Empire controlled that sector of space. There were insect-like creatures, tall as bears, with black shells that shined like metal. They had 4 arms and eyes that glowed red. Their leader, High Executor Axe, stood on a platform across from. When Axe spoke, his voice sounded like scraping metal. "The humans want our territory," Axe said. He made a sound that might have been laughter. "These soft creatures who only left their planet 200 years ago, they live for barely a century. They have weak bodies, and they think they deserve a place among us." Other aliens in the chamber made sounds of agreement. Some clicked their tongues, others buzzed. A few released clouds of colored gas that their species used for laughing. Felt her face grow hot with anger, but she stayed quiet. Had told her to let him do the talking. "We have followed all the proper procedures," said. His voice carried clearly through the hall. "We have submitted our application. We have shown that we can maintain these colonies. We ask only for what the law allows." A crystalline being from the Union rose from its seat. Its body looked like living glass and light bent around it in strange ways. "The law allows many things," it said in a voice like singing bells. "But wisdom requires us to consider reality. Humanity is young, inexperienced. You have fought wars only on your own world. You know nothing of the dangers in deep space." "Then let us learn," said. Axe clicked his mandibles together. "Perhaps we should test this human courage. They have a tradition. When new species claim our territory, we offer them a demonstration, a small conflict, a test of military capability." Felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his face still. "What kind of test?" "Simple," Axe said. "We meet on neutral ground. Both sides bring forces. We fight until one side surrenders or is defeated. If you win, you get your colonies. If we win, humanity withdraws all territorial claims for 50 years. The chamber filled with noise as aliens discussed this proposal, leaned close to and whispered, "This is a trap. They have never lost these demonstrations. I studied their history. They have done this to 17 other species." "I know," whispered back. "Then why?" "Because if we refuse, we look weak," said quietly. "We lose the colonies anyway. At least this way we have a chance." Turn back to Axe. "We accept your challenge." The High Executor's mandibles spread wide in what might have been a smile. "Excellent. We will meet on the planet Keres 7, 3 weeks from now. Bring whatever forces you wish. We will do the same." The session ended. The aliens began to leave the chamber, talking among themselves. Many of them looked at with what might have been pity. A few looked excited, as if they would enjoy watching the humans lose. And walked back to their ship through corridors filled with strange beings. No one spoke to them. Finally, they reached the docking bay where the human carrier Indomitable waited. The ship was big and gray, built for war but also for carrying thousands of people across the void of space. When walked onto the bridge, his crew stood at attention. They had been watching the assembly session on their screens. "At ease," said. He moved to the central command chair and sat down. "I suppose you all heard." "Yes, sir," said Lieutenant. He was young, barely 25, but he had sharp eyes and quick hands. We have 3 weeks to prepare for a fight against the— Not just any fight, said Sergeant Song. She was older than most of the crew, with scars on her arms from a dozen battles. A demonstration fight. They want to humiliate us in front of the whole galaxy. Nodded. That's exactly what they want. So we need to give them something different, something they don't expect. He turned to his tactical officer. Corporal Minu, pull up everything we have on Carey 7. The main screen lit up with an image of a dead planet. It was all brown and gray, covered with deep canyons and rocky plateaus. No water, no plants, just stone and dust. It's a barren world, Minu said. Used sometimes for military training. The canyons are deep. Some go down over 1,000 meters. The rock is sedimentary, which means it formed in layers, not very stable. Studied the image carefully. His eyes moved across every canyon, every cliff face, every narrow passage. Slowly, very slowly, he began to smile. "What are you thinking?" asked. "I'm thinking about how the fight," said. "They rely on superior numbers, better weapons, stronger armor. They fight the traditional way, line against line, force against force. And we can't match that," said. "They'll bring thousands, we can maybe bring a few hundred." "Exactly," said. "So we don't fight their way, we fight our way." He stood up and looked at his crew. These were good people, brave people. They had volunteered to come out here into the unknown, representing a species that the galaxy saw as weak and primitive. 3 weeks, said. "We have 3 weeks to prepare. I want everyone who can fight ready to deploy. I want engineers studying those canyons. I want every tactical scenario planned down to the second. And I want absolute secrecy. No communications off this ship that aren't encrypted." "What's the plan, sir?" asked. Looked back at the image of Carey 7. To think they know how to fight. They've been fighting the same way for 1,000 years. But humanity learned something during our wars. We learned that survival matters more than honor. We learned that victory matters more than looking strong. He turned back to his crew. "We're going to show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. We're going to show them what we're really capable of." The crew stood silent for a moment. Then, one by one, they nodded. "Get to work," said. "We have a battle to win." As the crew scattered to their stations, stayed behind, she said quietly, "A lot of our people are going to die on Carey 7. "I know," he said. "Is it worth it, for 3 empty planets?" Looked out at the stars through the— "It's not about the planets, it's about showing the galaxy that humanity belongs here, that we're not weak, that we won't be pushed around." He paused. "Yes, it's worth it." Nodded slowly. She didn't fully agree, but she understood. The Indomitable turned away from the Galactic Assembly Station and began its journey toward Carey 7. Behind them, across 1,000 worlds, aliens were already making bets about how quickly the humans would fall. None of them knew what was coming. The landing pods hit the surface of Carey 7 like meteors. Each pod carried 20 soldiers. The impact threw up clouds of red dust that took minutes to settle. When the doors opened, the human soldiers stepped out onto a world that wanted them dead. Captain Lee was the first out of his pod. The air was thin but breathable. The gravity was lighter than Earth, which made movement easier but also made it harder to stay balanced. All around him, the canyons of Carey 7 stretched out like wounds in the planet's surface. The sky was a dull orange color. "Form up," called to his squad. 20 soldiers gathered around him, checking their weapons and equipment. They wore armor that was lighter than what they used, but it was flexible and let them move fast. Across the canyon floor, more pods were landing. 800 humans total. Against them, they were bringing 15,000 warriors. Looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there in orbit, ships from a dozen alien species were watching. They had come to see the demonstration, to watch humanity lose. Some of them had placed bets on how long the humans would last. Most bets were for less than 6 hours. Lieutenant came running over. "Captain Lee, Commander Park wants all squad leaders at the command post. The command post was just a prefab shelter set up in a cave opening, stood over a holographic map of the canyon system. Around him were the other squad leaders. Sergeant Song was there, her face hard and ready. So was Corporal Minu, who kept adjusting his equipment nervously. "Listen carefully," said. "They will be here in less than 2 hours. They're landing on the northern plateau. They'll march down through the main canyon because it's the fastest route to our position. Their doctrine is simple: overwhelming firepower. They'll advance in formation and try to crush us with superior numbers." "So how do we stop them?" asked Captain. "We don't," said. "Not at first. We let them think they're winning." The squad leaders looked at each other with confusion. Pointed to the map. "The canyon system is like a maze. There are dozens of passages. Some are wide, some are narrow. They will take the main routes because that's what their training tells them to do. We're going to use the side passages. We're going to hit them, hurt them, and then fall back." "That sounds like we're just delaying our defeat," said. "That's what I want them to think," said. His finger traced a path on the map. "Every time we fall back, we're leading them deeper into the canyon system, toward this point here, the central canyon complex. When enough of them are there, we close the trap." "What kind of trap?" Minu asked. "The kind that uses their arrogance against them," said. "Now get to your positions, and remember, make it look real. If we don't look desperate, they won't follow." The squad leaders moved out to their positions, took his squad to the northern approaches. They set up behind rock formations that would give them cover. The waiting was the worst part. The sun was getting lower, turning the orange sky to red. Then they came. First there was just dust on the horizon. Then the dust became shapes, hundreds of shapes. They marched in perfect formation. Their black armor reflected the dying sunlight. They carried plasma rifles that glowed blue. Behind them came heavy weapons, walking tanks, artillery platforms, everything designed to destroy. Raised his hand. His squad went silent. He could hear his own heartbeat. Closer. They were getting closer. "Now," he whispered. The humans opened fire. Bullets tore into the formation. Several aliens went down, but they didn't even slow down. They just raised their shields and fired back. Plasma bolts hit the rocks around's position. The stone melted. The heat was incredible. "Fall back," shouted. His squad retreated through a narrow passage in the rocks. Behind them, the advanced. Could hear them broadcasting in their language. He didn't understand the words, but he knew they were laughing, mocking the humans for running. In orbit, the alien observers watched their screens. They saw the human positions collapsing. They saw the pushing forward steadily. "As expected," said a diplomat. "The humans fight bravely, but they have no chance." On another ship, commanders watched with satisfaction. High Executor Axe stood with his arms crossed. "By nightfall, this will be over. The humans will surrender or die." But down on the surface, something else was happening. Specialist Han was a combat medic. She moved through the battlefield like a ghost, always where she was needed. When Private took a plasma bolt to the shoulder, was there in seconds. She pulled him behind cover and treated the wound. "It hurts," said through his teeth. "You'll live," said. "Now get back to your squad." She moved to the next wounded soldier. Then the next. The injured were piling up. They were doing exactly what everyone expected. They were crushing the human forces with pure firepower. But notice something. The human retreat wasn't random. They were falling back along specific paths, always moving toward the center of the canyon system, and they weren't leaving equipment behind. A rooted army leaves things. These soldiers were taking everything with them. By nightfall, they had pushed the humans back 5 kilometers. They had taken the northern approaches and were now moving into the deeper canyons. Their commanders were pleased. Casualties were minimal. The humans were broken. In the human command post, watched the tactical display, stood next to him. She had come down from the Indomitable to coordinate the medical efforts. "We've lost 63 people," she said quietly. "Another 112 wounded." His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away from the display. "I know, every single one of them matters." "Then why are we doing this?" asked. "Why are we sacrificing them?" "Because if we don't, humanity has no future out here," said. "The galaxy needs to know we're not prey, we're not weak, we're survivors." He pointed to the display. "Look, they have committed 90% of their forces to the main advance. They're all moving through the primary canyon routes. In 6 more hours, they'll be exactly where we need them." The second day was worse than the first. They pressed their advance at dawn. They had brought up their heavy weapons. Artillery shells rained down on human positions. Captain's squad was pinned down in a narrow ravine. Plasma fire came from 3 directions. "We can't hold here," shouted over the noise. "We're not supposed to hold," shouted back. "Fall back to position 7. They ran. Behind them, the ravine exploded as artillery found their position. 3 soldiers didn't make it, saw them fall but couldn't stop to help them. The mission came first. All across the battlefield, the same thing was happening. Human squads would fight, take casualties, and then retreat. They followed eagerly. This was exactly what they expected from weak opponents: a slow collapse, a gradual defeat. In orbit, more aliens arrived to watch. Word had spread across the galaxy. The humans were losing, but they were lasting longer than expected. It was entertaining. On the command ship, officers were already planning the victory celebration. High Executor Axe had opened expensive crystalline wine. "Another day, perhaps 2, and the humans will surrender," he said. But down in the canyons, Corporal Minu was working with his engineering team. They moved quietly through passages that they hadn't reached yet. At specific points, they drilled into the canyon walls. They placed charges, not big obvious ones, small careful ones, placed exactly where the rock was weakest. Minu looked up at the massive canyon walls. Millions of tons of stone, held up by sedimentary layers that had formed over millions of years, beautiful in their own way, but fragile if you knew where to push. "How many more?" asked one of his engineers. 40 sites left," Minu said. "We have until dawn." They worked through the night. By the 3rd morning, they had pushed the humans back to the central canyon complex. It was a massive area where 5 different canyons met. The walls were high and steep. There was only one way in, and it was through the passages they now controlled. The human forces looked broken. They had lost nearly a quarter of their strength. Their positions were weak. They had nowhere left to run. The commanders looked at their displays and saw victory. 15,000 warriors, all converging on the last human stronghold. By noon, it would be over. High Executor Axe sent a message on all frequencies. His voice echoed across the battlefield. "Humans, you fought with courage, but courage is not enough. Surrender now and we will let you leave with honor. Refuse and we will show no mercy." In the human command post, received the message. His officers looked at him, waiting for orders. Smiled, it was not a kind smile. "Open a channel," he said. When the channel opened, spoke clearly. His voice reached every soldier, every orbital observer, every alien species watching from their ships. "You should have taken us seriously," he said. Then he gave the order. "Fire everything." The morning of the 3rd day started like the others. The forces gathered for their final push. 15,000 warriors stood ready in the canyon passages. They were confident. Victory was close. They could taste it. But up in orbit, Doctor was looking at her displays with growing concern. She had been studying the human troop movements for the past 2 days. Something wasn't right. "Pull up the tactical map from yesterday," she said to the ship's computer. The display showed the human retreat patterns. "Now overlay today's positions." The computer obeyed, stared at the result. Her eyes went wide. "Oh," she whispered. "Oh, that's brilliant." She opened a channel to the surface. I just realized what you're doing. Good's voice came back. That means the plan is working. If it took you this long to see it, they definitely haven't noticed. Looked at the map again. The human retreat hadn't been random at all. Every fallback position, every desperate stand, every seeming mistake had been carefully planned. The humans had been herding the forces like animals to a slaughter. Down on the surface, Lieutenant was doing something very dangerous. He and his reconnaissance team had spent the last 2 days moving behind lines. They wore camouflage that made them almost invisible against the rock. They moved slowly, carefully, never drawing attention. Their job was simple but crucial. They were spotting. Every time the forces moved through a canyon passage, his team marked the position. They counted numbers. They identified which units were where. All this information went back to his command post. Target Zone 7 now has 3,000 units, whispered into his communicator. He was lying on a ridge looking down at a massive column. They were marching through a narrow canyon, shoulder to shoulder. They're packed in tight. Confirmed, came the reply. Hold position. Held, his team had been awake for 50 hours straight. They were exhausted, but they couldn't risk being discovered. Not now, not when they were so close. In another part of the battlefield, Sergeant Song was leading what looked like a desperate attack. Her squad charged at a position, firing wildly. They responded with overwhelming force. Plasma bolts filled the air. Fall back, shouted. Her squad retreated in apparent panic. They pursued. That was the point. Led them through a specific path, down a specific canyon, toward a specific location. Behind her, the thought they were chasing broken soldiers. They didn't realize they were being led into position. A young soldier named Private ran next to. Sergeant, when do we stop running? When the commander gives the word, said. Until then, we keep them chasing. This feels like we're losing. That's the idea, said with a grim smile. The commanders were satisfied with their progress. High Executor Axe sat in his command chair aboard his ship, watching the tactical displays. The humans were cornered now, trapped in the central canyon complex with no way out. All forces advance to final positions, he ordered. We will crush them in one coordinated strike. The forces moved as ordered. Thousands of warriors poured through the canyon passages. They advanced in tight formation, weapons ready. The narrow passages meant they had to bunch together, but that was fine. The humans had nowhere to run. In the human command post, Corporal Minu sat at his engineering station. His hands moved across the controls. On his screen were dozens of markers. Each one represented a demolition charge planted in the canyon walls. All charges armed, he reported. Ready on your command, sir. Stood at the command table. Around him were his remaining officers. They had been fighting for 3 days. Many of them had wounds. All of them were exhausted, but their eyes were hard and determined. On the tactical display could see the forces. They were all there. 90% of their army, all concentrated in the canyon passages around the central complex, exactly where he wanted them. He said to his signals officer, "Open all channels. I want every soldier to hear this. I want every observer in orbit to hear this." Specialist Bay worked her controls. "Channels open, sir. You're broadcasting to the entire battlefield." Took a breath, then he spoke. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "To the forces on Carré 7, you have fought well. You followed your doctrine perfectly. You did everything right according to your training and experience. But you made one mistake. You thought humanity would fight like you. We don't." In the ranks, soldiers heard these words. Some laughed. Some were confused. Their commanders told them to ignore it. Just the last words of a defeated enemy. "Humanity doesn't fight for honor," continued. "We don't fight to prove we're strong. We fight to survive. And survival doesn't care about rules. Survival doesn't care about fairness. Survival only cares about one thing, living to see tomorrow." Up in orbit, aliens were listening now. The mocking had stopped. Something in its voice made them pay attention. "You should have taken us seriously," said. "Menu execute." Corporal Menu pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. The forces stood in the canyons, waiting for the final assault. The human positions were right ahead. Victory was seconds away. Then the world exploded. Not with fire, not with traditional explosions, with sound and stone and physics. The charges Menu's team had placed weren't meant to kill directly. They were placed at the weak points in the canyon walls, points where the sedimentary rock was already under stress from millions of years of geological pressure. The charges didn't destroy the walls. They just gave them permission to fall. And fall they did. The canyon walls came down in massive sheets, thousands of tons of rock sliding, tumbling, crushing everything below. The sound was like thunder but deeper, louder. It shook the entire planet. Soldiers looked up and saw the walls coming down on them. Some tried to run. Some tried to raise shields. It didn't matter. You can't fight gravity. You can't fight millions of tons of stone. In 17 seconds, 15,000 warriors disappeared under the rock. The battlefield went completely silent. Lieutenant watched from his ridge position. The canyon where 3,000 had been standing was now just a field of rubble. Nothing moved. Nothing made sound. It was like the valley had been erased. "Dear God," whispered one of his team members. Just stared. They had known this was the plan. They had helped make it happen. But seeing it was different from knowing it would happen. In the human positions, soldiers stood in shock. They had been fighting for 3 days. They had lost friends. They had been hurt. They had been afraid. And now, suddenly, it was over. Captain Lee stood at the edge of the central complex, looking out at the canyons. Where there had been an army, there was now only silence and stone. "We won," said Lieutenant. He said it like he didn't quite believe it. "We survived," corrected. "That's what matters." In orbit, every alien observer sat in stunned silence. Their instruments showed what had happened. 15,000 life signs had simply vanished, gone in seconds. The tactical displays looked wrong, empty, like a glitch in the system. But it wasn't a glitch. On the command ship, High Executor Axe stood frozen. His mandibles hung open. His officers stared at their screens, unable to process what they were seeing. "Impossible," Axe whispered. That's impossible." But the empty displays didn't care about impossible. His voice came over the communications channel again. Every ship in orbit heard it. Every species, every observer. "Humanity doesn't fight fair," he said. "We fight to survive. We use the environment. We use tactics you don't expect. We do whatever we must to see another day. That's what makes us dangerous. Not our weapons, not our armor, our willingness to do what survival requires." He paused, letting that sink in. "Remember this day," said. "Remember what happened when you underestimated us. We didn't come to the stars to be prey. We came to claim our place. And we will fight for that place with everything we have, with every tool we can find, with every advantage we can create." The communication cut off. In orbit, the diplomat who had mocked humanity sat in silence. Around the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, aliens who had been watching the broadcast looked at each other with new understanding and fear. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy, not with words, with action. Down on the surface, Specialist Han walked among the human positions, treating the wounded. So many wounded. 247 dead over 3 days. Nearly 300 more injured. She found Private sitting against a rock. He was crying, not from pain, from everything else. "We killed them all," he said. "All of them." "Yes," said simply. She sat down next to him. "We did." "Does that make us monsters?" Looked out at the ruined canyons. "No," she said. "It makes us survivors, the wanted this fight. They mocked us. They thought we were weak. They learned different." She stood up and offered her hand. Come on, we have work to do, our people need help. Took her hand and stood. Together, they walked back toward the medical station. Above them, in the orange sky, the first ships were already leaving orbit, going back to their home worlds to report what they had seen, to tell others about the humans, about what happened when you pushed them into a corner. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The silence lasted for 3 full minutes, 3 minutes where no one spoke, no one moved. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then everything happened at once. On the command ship, alarms started blaring. Officers shouted at each other in their clicking language. High Executor Axe stood at his command station, his 4 arms shaking. "Get rescue teams down there," he screamed. "Find survivors, there must be survivors." But his officers knew the truth. The sensor readings were clear. 15,000 warriors had been in those canyons. Now there were maybe 200 life signs scattered around the edges, the ones who had been in reserve positions, the ones who hadn't entered the trap. Everyone else was gone. A junior officer approached Axe carefully. "High Executor, should we send our remaining forces to attack the human position?" Axe turned on him with fury in his glowing eyes. Then the fury faded. What remained was something worse: fear. "No," he said quietly, "we withdraw immediately." On other observation ships, representatives from dozens of species were sending urgent messages back to their home worlds. The diplomat's hands shook as she composed her report. She kept having to rewrite it because she couldn't find the right words. How do you explain what just happened? How do you tell your government that a species they dismissed as primitive just wiped out an army in 17 seconds? Observer, a species known for their wisdom and long memories, sat in his meditation chamber. He was very old, even by standards. He had seen many wars, many species rise and fall, but this was different. "They didn't just win," he said to his aide. "They made a statement. They showed the galaxy that humanity will use any advantage, any tactic, any weapon to survive. That makes them more dangerous than species with better technology." "What should we do?" his aide asked. "We should be very, very careful," the old said, "and we should treat them with respect." Down on Carey 7, Commander Park walked through the human positions. Soldiers saluted as he passed. Some of them were cheering. Others sat in silence, processing what they had done. Stopped at the medical station. It was a large tent filled with wounded soldiers. Specialist hand-worked frantically, moving from bed to bed. She looked exhausted. "Status?" asked. 247 dead, said without stopping her work. 293 wounded. 70 of those are serious. We need to get them to the Indomitable soon or we might lose more. Nodded, "The shuttles are coming. Another 20 minutes. He walked among the wounded, stopping to speak with each soldier, thanking them. Most were too tired or hurt to respond much, but he needed them to know their sacrifice mattered. At one bed, he found Private. The young soldier's left arm was bandaged heavily. "How are you doing, Private?" "I'll live, sir," said. Then quieter, "Sir, did we do the right thing? What we did to the—" Sat down on the edge of the bed. "They challenged us to this fight. They mocked us. They thought we would be easy to defeat. They brought 15,000 warriors to crush 800 humans. What we did was survive. But we killed so many." "Yes," said firmly, "we did, and I will carry that weight for the rest of my life. Every commander who sends soldiers into battle carries that weight. But I will tell you something, Private. Those 247 humans who died saved billions back on Earth. They showed the galaxy that humanity won't be pushed around. That matters." Nodded slowly. Stood up. "Rest now, you've earned it." Outside the medical tent, Sergeant Song was supervising the cleanup operations. Bodies needed to be recovered. Equipment needed to be secured. It was grim work but necessary. Lieutenant approached her. "They are withdrawing. All their remaining forces are pulling back to their ships. Good, said. Let them go. We're not here to hunt them, we're here to prove a point. Do you think we proved it? Looked at the ruins of the canyons. Oh, we proved it. The question is what happens next. That question was being asked across the galaxy. On hundreds of worlds, governments were holding emergency meetings. Military commanders were reviewing the battle footage. Everyone wanted to understand what had happened and what it meant for them. On the planet, the Council of Elders gathered. They were an old species, peaceful by nature. They had watched humanity's development with mild interest. Now that interest had turned to concern. The humans are more dangerous than we thought, said one elder. Or more creative, said another. They use the environment as a weapon. That shows intelligence. It shows ruthlessness, a third elder argued. They buried an entire army alive. The eldest of the council raised her hand for silence. They did what they had to do to survive. That is neither good nor evil. It simply is. The question before us is whether we want humanity as friend or potential enemy. The council voted. They chose friendship. On the military world the reaction was different. They were a warrior species. They respected strength. They understood combat, and what they saw from humanity impressed them. The Supreme General watched the battle footage for the 5th time. Magnificent, he said. They turned their weakness into strength. They used terrain we would have ignored. This is what true warriors do. Should we be concerned? Asked his second in command. Concerned? No. Interested? Very much yes. I want to establish contact with the human military. I want to learn from them. But not everyone was impressed or interested in friendship. The Empire was humiliated. High Executor Axe returned to his home world in disgrace. The ruling council met to decide his fate. 15,000 warriors lost, said the council chair. Her voice dripped with contempt. 15,000 against 800 humans. How is this possible? They used tricks, Axe said. Deception. They didn't fight honorably. Honor, the chair snapped. You speak of honor when you brought overwhelming force against a weaker opponent. The humans didn't need honor. They needed victory, and they got it, while you got embarrassment. The council stripped Axe of his rank and titles. The Empire its territorial claim to the outer colonies. They had no choice. According to the terms of the demonstration, humanity had won. But more importantly, they had learned that humanity was not to be underestimated. That lesson would save lives in the future, on both sides. Back on the Indomitable, Doctor stood in the observation deck, looking down at Keres 7. The planet looked peaceful from orbit. You couldn't see the destroyed canyons. You couldn't see the rubble that entombed 15,000 bodies. Entered the deck and stood next to her. You did it, said. You won your colonies for Earth. We did it, corrected. Every soldier down there, every engineer, every medic, they won this. At a heavy cost. Yes, said. He looked tired, older than he had 3 days ago. I'll never forget them, the 247. Their names are already being carved into the memorial wall on Earth. They stood in silence for a moment. What do you think happens now? Asked. Now the galaxy knows we exist, really exist, not as a curiosity or a joke, as a real power. Some species will want to be our friends, some will be afraid, some will test us again to see if this was luck or skill. And when they test us, his expression hardened, we show them it wasn't luck. On Earth, news of the victory was spreading. Cities erupted in celebration. Humanity had faced the galaxy and won. 3 new colonies were now open for settlement. Millions of people would have new homes among the stars. But in the government buildings, in the military headquarters, the leaders understood the real significance. Earth was no longer alone. They had proven themselves. Now they had to live up to that proof. The president of the United Earth government gave a speech that was broadcast across the planet and transmitted to every human settlement in space. Today we honor those who fell on Keres 7, 247 brave souls who gave everything so that humanity could have a future among the stars. They will never be forgotten. Their sacrifice has bought us something precious: respect. The galaxy now knows that Earth's children are not to be dismissed or mocked. We are survivors. We are clever. We are determined. And we will claim our place in this vast universe. The speech was also picked up by alien monitoring stations across the galaxy. It was translated into 100 languages, studied by 1,000 governments. Humanity had spoken, not just with words but with actions. In a distant sector of space, on a world that humans had never heard of, an ancient species called the discussed the news. They had been spacefaring for 10,000 years. They had seen many young species enter the galactic community. "These humans," said the elder, "they concern me." "Because they are violent?" asked a younger. "No, because they are adaptable. Violence alone is not dangerous. Many species are violent, but these humans, they learn to use their environment, to think beyond standard tactics. That kind of flexibility is rare and dangerous." "Should we make contact?" The elder considered. "Not yet. Let them establish themselves further. Let them make mistakes and learn from them. Then we will see if they are worthy partners or potential threats." Back on the Indomitable, the crew prepared for the journey home. The wounded were stable. The dead were placed in stasis chambers to be returned to Earth for burial. The victory felt hollow to those who had been on the ground. But it was still a victory. As the ship's engines powered up, stood on the bridge one last time, looking at Keres 7 on the "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "Course laid in, sir," replied the navigation officer. "Take us home." The Indomitable turned away from the barren planet, where everything had changed, and began its journey back to Earth, carrying heroes and memories and the weight of history. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Keres 7. That's what the historians were calling it now. The Battle of Keres 7, the day humanity announced itself to the galaxy. The Galactic Assembly had called another session. This time, the Great Hall felt different. When Commander Park walked in with Doctor, the aliens didn't laugh. They didn't mock. They watched with careful eyes and gave the humans space to pass. Wore his dress uniform. His medals caught the light. Next to him, carried the documentation for humanity's territorial claims, the same claims that had been dismissed 3 weeks ago. The assembly chair, a being made of crystallized energy, called the session to order. "The matter before us is simple. The human delegation has won their demonstration against the Empire. According to the laws of this assembly, their territorial claims are valid and must be approved." No one objected. The vote was called. It passed unanimously. 3 colony worlds in the outer colonies now belong to humanity, legally, officially. But knew this was just the beginning. The real work happened after the vote, in the corridors and private meeting rooms where power actually moved. Ambassador O was waiting in one of those rooms. He was older than, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years in diplomatic service, working to make humanity relevant on the galactic stage. "Commander," said with a slight bow, "congratulations on your victory." "Thank you, Ambassador. What happens now?" Smiled. "Now we find out who our friends are." Over the next few days, representatives from various species requested meetings with the human delegation. Some came out of fear, some from respect, some simply from curiosity. The first meeting was with a species known for their wisdom. Their ambassador was an ancient being who moved slowly but spoke with clear purpose. "Commander Park," they said, "my people wish to establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth. We believe humanity would benefit from our experience, and we would benefit from your unique perspective." "We would be honored," said. "However," they continued, "we must be honest. Your tactics on Keres 7 frightened many species. They see humanity as dangerous." "We are dangerous," said simply, "to those who threaten us." They made a sound that might have been approval. A fair answer. The Republic will support humanity's applications for trade routes and cultural exchanges, but we also ask that you consider joining the Mutual Defense Coalition. Your military creativity would be valuable. Ambassador negotiated the details over several hours. By the end, humanity had its first major ally in the galaxy. The next meeting was with the warrior species. Their general was a massive being covered in armor-like scales. "Human," the general said, "your victory was impressive. We wish to arrange military exchanges. Our warriors could learn from your tactics, and perhaps your warriors could learn from our combat traditions." "An interesting proposal," said. The general leaned forward. "The galaxy is not entirely peaceful, Commander. There are threats beyond the borders of civilized space. Pirates, raiders, worse things. Species who understand strength will survive. We believe humanity understands strength." This meeting also ended in agreement. Human and military officers would exchange visits. Training exercises would be conducted together. It was the beginning of what could become a strong military alliance. Not all meetings went well. The Union sent a representative, but the crystalline being was cold and formal. They agreed to recognize human territories but refused any deeper relationship. "Your species is too young, too unpredictable," they said. "Perhaps in a few centuries we can revisit diplomatic relations." Accepted this without argument. He understood. Some species would take longer to trust humanity. That was fine. Time was on their side now. The Empire sent no representative. They had retreated from galactic politics after their humiliation. High Executor acts had been replaced. The new leadership wanted nothing to do with humanity for now. Maybe that would change. Maybe not. Back on Earth, the effects of the victory were dramatic. The 3 new colonies were already being prepared for settlement. Millions of people applied for the chance to live on these new worlds, to be pioneers among the stars. The military recruitment numbers jumped. Young people saw what happened on Carey 7 and wanted to be part of humanity's future. They wanted to serve, to explore, to protect Earth's interests in the wider galaxy. Sergeant Song found herself promoted to lieutenant and assigned to train new recruits. She stood before a class of fresh-faced young soldiers and told them about Carey 7. "We didn't win because we were stronger," she said. "We won because we were smarter. We used every advantage we could find. That's what you need to learn, not how to be the biggest or the toughest, how to survive and win despite the odds." The recruits listened with wide eyes. They had seen the footage. They knew the legend. Now they were learning from someone who had been there. Captain Lee also found himself teaching, but his lessons were different. He taught tactics and strategy to officer candidates. "The enemy will always have advantages," he told his students. "Better weapons, more soldiers, superior technology. Your job is to find their weaknesses and exploit them. The terrain is a weapon. The environment is a weapon. Your enemy's expectations are a weapon. Use everything." Lieutenant stayed with active service. He joined a reconnaissance unit that was exploring the new colonies. His job was to survey the terrain, identify resources, and watch for potential threats. It was dangerous work, but he loved it. Specialist Han left military service entirely. She had seen enough combat. Instead, she joined the medical corps on one of the new colonies. She would help the first settlers build their new lives. That felt more important to her now. Corporal Minu became an engineer on the Indomitable. He helped design new defensive systems for human ships. His experience on Carey 7 taught him how to think creatively about protection. His innovations would save lives in the future. Private healed from his wounds and returned to duty, but he transferred to search and rescue. He wanted to save people, not fight them. His experience on Carey 7 had changed him, made him value life more. 6 months after the battle, a memorial was unveiled on Earth. It was a simple black wall with 247 names carved into it. The names of those who died so humanity could have a future among the stars. Attended the dedication ceremony. So did many of the survivors. Families of the fallen came from around the world. It was a somber day. Rain fell softly as the president gave a speech. These men and women gave everything, the president said. They faced impossible odds. They didn't fight for glory or conquest. They fought so that we could have a place in the galaxy, so that our children and could explore the stars. We owe them a debt we can never fully repay, but we can honor them, we can remember them, and we can live lives worthy of their sacrifice. After the ceremony, stood before the wall reading the names. He had memorized all of them, every single one. He would never forget. Found him there as the sun was setting. She didn't say anything, just stood next to him in silence. "Do you think it was worth it?" finally asked. "I think they thought it was worth it," said. "They volunteered, they knew the risks, and they went anyway." "That doesn't make it easier." "No," agreed. "It doesn't, but it makes it meaningful." They stood together until the sun went down. 1 year after HFY-7, something unexpected happened. A distress signal reached Earth from the edge of explored space. A species called the Deneb were under attack from raiders. Their defenses were failing. They were asking for help. The Galactic Assembly debated what to do. The Deneb were a small species, not very influential. Many larger species saw no reason to risk their forces for them. Then Ambassador O stood up at the assembly session. "Humanity will respond to the distress call," he said simply. "We will send forces to defend the Deneb." Other species were surprised. "Why would you do this?" asked a representative. "The Deneb have nothing to offer you." "Because it's the right thing to do," said. "And because humanity remembers what it's like to be small and vulnerable. We won't stand by while others suffer." The Indomitable was sent with a small fleet. Commander Park was once again in command. Many of his original crew volunteered to join the mission. When they arrived at the Deneb home world, they found it under siege by pirate forces. The pirates had superior numbers and better weapons. It looked hopeless. But smiled when he saw the tactical situation. "This reminds me of another battle," he said to his crew. "We've been here before. We know how to fight this." The battle was quick and brutal. The humans used unconventional tactics. They turned the local asteroid field into a weapon. They used the planet's gravity well to their advantage. They fought smart instead of strong. The pirates were routed in less than 6 hours. The Deneb were saved. When the Deneb Council met, they bowed deeply. "You came when no one else would," their leader said. "Humanity has proven to be more than warriors. You are heroes." "We're just doing what needed to be done," said. "The same thing any decent species should do." News of the rescue spread quickly across the galaxy. Humanity's reputation shifted again. They weren't just dangerous. They were also willing to help those in need. That combination, strength and compassion, made them someone worth knowing. More species reached out to establish relations with Earth. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began. Human music, art, and literature spread to alien worlds, and alien culture began flowing to Earth. The future was uncertain. There would be more challenges, more conflicts, more tests, but humanity had proven they belonged among the stars. They had earned their place not through superior technology or vast numbers, but through cleverness, determination, and the willingness to do whatever survival required. 2 years after HFY-7, Commander Park stood on the bridge of the Indomitable. They were heading to the outer colonies to check on the new settlements. It had become routine work now, almost boring compared to the battle. An alert sounded, a new signal. "Sir, we're receiving a distress call," the communications officer reported. "A colony on Titan's Edge is under attack by unknown forces." Looked at his crew. Sergeant Song was there, now a lieutenant commander. So was Lieutenant. So were many others who had been with him on Carey 7. Status of the colony. Defenses failing. They need help immediately. Sat in his command chair. 2 years ago, humanity had been mocked, dismissed, underestimated. Now they were the ones other species called for help. Helm set course for Titan's Edge. Maximum speed. Yes, sir, course laid in. Looked at his crew. We've been here before, we know what to do, we fight smart, we use every advantage, and we bring our people home. Yes, sir, the crew responded as one. The Indomitable turned and accelerated toward the distress call, toward another battle, toward another chance to prove what humanity could do. Because that's what they were now, not just survivors, not just warriors, they were protectors, defenders, heroes. The galaxy had mocked them once, the battlefield had gone silent, and nothing would ever be the same again. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and they were here to stay.